While everyone is rushing around trying to build new habits, there's one thing that no one is talking about. Building habits is really hard. And that's because it's so easy for us to try and think that willpower alone is going to get us there. And the reality is we all fall to willpower eventually. Soon, when we're trying to build in new habits, the old ones come creeping back and we end up just back where we were before. And why does this happen? Well, that's because we don't actually remove the unhealthy ones in the first place. And so in this video, I'm going to show you 24 unhealthy habits that you can remove in 2024. First up is FOPO. This is fear of other people's opinions. When you're so caught up in worrying about what other people think of you, you'll never actually go out and do what you think is right for you. Some of the most top performers don't really care what other people think of them. They just think about what matters most to them and focus on that so that they can start to do what it is that feels right and only listen to those that are in their circle of trust and people that they value. Next up is fear of failure. Many people are crippled by fear of failure. The fact that we aren't willing to take a chance on something because we're so worried that what happens if things don't go right, all of the what ifs that happen. Life is really a game of failure. Sport is a game of failure. Once we're able to accept that failure is a part of us growing and building out opportunities, then we can start to actually make progress. But until you're not willing to get over your fear of failure or even face it, you will struggle to start making progress, worrying that every move you make might be one step closer to that failure. Just accept the fact that you are going to fail, learn from it, and build opportunities from them. Number 3 is lack of sleep. Sleep is our greatest performance enhancing drug. Getting enough sleep between 7 to 9 hours not only gives you the energy to perform the next day, but also enough time to recover from the day you've just had. But most of us don't prioritize sleep. Many of us are trying to build out good morning routines so that we can have the energy for the day. And I actually think we should be focusing on evening routines, ways in which we can wind down, start to build out a routine that allows us to have good quality sleep. So building out an evening routine could be things like meditation, could be doing some light stretching, journaling, and mostly just doing something that allows you to feel calmer in the evening. The trouble is, most of us hinder our sleep by focusing on our fourth one, which is devices. We probably don't need to be told this, but spending a lot of time on our phones is not great for us. These engaging little devices that are built to take our attention away not only have an impact on our mental health, but they can also have an impact on our physical health. They keep us away from having a good night's sleep. It's also tuning our minds to be hungry for dopamine. We're constantly craving things that are quenching that thirst so that we don't stay focused or can't keep our attention on tasks that matter most to us. For something like this, I found a really helpful app called Opal. Opal really helps you focus your attention on what matters most by blocking away the apps that draw your attention into them. This isn't an ad. There's no way that they've got involved here. I have just used this app and it's something that I've found really beneficial. It blocks all the apps that I don't want to use during the day so that I can stay focused on what matters for me without my phone becoming a big distraction. Number 5 is inadequate nutrition. You're not fueling your body right. My coach used to tell me, you don't put diesel in a Ferrari. Now, while it was quite a funny metaphor, it actually was pretty right. You don't want to put the wrong fuel in the wrong machine. And we are trying to perform as athletes. And so nutrition is quite fundamental to us being able to do that. Recognize what you're putting in your body is going to give you the output. So if what you put in is no good, don't be surprised if the output is poor as well. Up next is impatience. Many people, both athletes and coaches, are beginning to get more and more impatient. We're starting to want the results right away. That's where we want this instant gratification, and that's not the reality. Reality is that progress takes time. And when you're more impatient, it's very easy for you to task switch and move away from whatever it is that you're trying to achieve. So recognize the journey is going to be long and you're going to require patience. So if you can start to remove some of your impatience, you might find that you make progress in whatever it is that you're seeking. And sometimes that impatience is fueled by our next one, which is comparing yourself to others. When we compare ourselves to others, we start to look at everyone else's achievements and think we're not there yet. When reality is everyone is on their own journey. So when you spend all of your energy focusing on other people, you take away energy on focusing on yourself. So going into this year, think about trying to remove as much comparison to others as you can so that you can focus on you and getting the best out of you. And sometimes when we're focusing on others, that makes us do what our next one is, which is setting unrealistic expectations. Most of the time when we're setting our goals, we set out targets that can be unrealistic to where we are right now. This requires us to then have a little bit of humility in where we're currently at. Mo Gaudat, author of The Happiness Equation, wrote in his book that happiness is equal to or greater than the events of your life and your expectation of how life should be. This ultimately means if you were to come to England and expect it to be sunny and then it's raining, you're going to feel unhappy because life hasn't met your expectations. If you come to England, you expect it to be raining, and it is raining, life has met your expectations and your happiness is unaffected. So this is a simple way in just recognizing that, sadly, we need to lower our expectations. Now, while this may sound bad, it's not actually, because someone like Jordan Peterson equally says that you want to aim lower, but keep aiming up. That is something that you can take forward about lowering your expectations, but making sure they are still a little bit higher than where you are right now. So it's all about setting achievable outcomes and goals, but not so high that they become overwhelming and they don't meet the expectations that you perhaps are setting. Number 9 is victim mentality. When we go out and try to achieve our goals, we believe that if we don't get them, sometimes there has been something that's out of our control and we've fallen victim to that. It makes us catastrophize and think that we are just succumbing to the environment that we're in and that there's not much that's in our control. When the reality is that when we focus on these things that are not in our control, that only fuels anxiety further. So to empower yourself, you want to look at what is in your control. When something bad happens to you, are you only focusing on all of the things that are not in your control, or can you empower yourself and look at what is in your control? The best performers, the best athletes look at everything that is in their control and focus on that rather than focus on being a victim. But most importantly, to bring more back into your control is about taking ownership. And number 10 is having a lack of ownership. When things aren't going your way or not progressing as you like, it's easy to fall into blame and look at other things that are beyond your control. When things aren't going your way or perhaps not progressing as you like, it's easy to fall into a bit of a blame culture. But really what you want to do is take ownership. Taking ownership brings more back in your control. It helps you prepare, stay focused, and hopefully perform better. Michael Phelps' coach famously used to knock his goggles off during training to help him practice in situations that were beyond his control. While this seems crazy, it wasn't until the 2008 Olympic final where Michael Phelps' goggles began to fill with water midway through the race. But because he had prepared for this, he took ownership of the moment. He didn't stop. He didn't blame the situation. He dealt with it and took ownership of the situation and ended up winning the race. So moving forward, can you take ownership of everything that you're doing so that you feel in more control? And that moves us on to our next one. No warm-ups. Many athletes will just skip warm-ups because it's easy to do, but then will end up getting injured or maybe not performing to their best ability and regretting it. I know from personal experience, every time that I have not done a warm-up properly, there has been a higher chance that I've got injured and even have got injured, knowing that if I was honest with myself, I didn't warm up to my full ability. Not only that, it's one of the fundamentals for building out longevity in the sport and getting yourself prepared, which would also lead into our next one. No mental preparation. Whether your mental skill that you're implementing is self-talk, visualization, breathing exercises, whatever it might be, adding in mental preparation is a vital part of performing well. This is why the top athletes invest time and money into developing their mental game just as much as they do their physical game. They know that when they make it to the top, everyone is physically capable, but it's the last 10%, the mental part of the game, that everyone battles with. And while physical training and mental training are important parts of getting yourself ready, you may also fall into this next trap, which is overtraining. Now, I definitely fell into this during my time as a professional athlete. I used to train over and over and over again, and you're not giving yourself enough time to recover so that you don't face injury or possibly burnout. Even some of the toughest people on the planet, someone like David Goggins, even talks about how he gets his 8 hours of sleep in, stretches, and uses recovery to his advantage so that he can consistently perform. Now, while you may not be David Goggins, you don't want to face burnout or injury. And so overtraining, thinking that you need to just go harder and harder and harder, isn't what's going to get you towards your goals and dreams faster. It possibly will move you away from them. So making sure that you're blending recovery and your performance and your training nicely so that you don't fall into overtraining. And as I mentioned there, ignoring stretching is another unhealthy habit you can get rid of. Stretching should be seen as an important part of your training, almost as important as any other physical preparation that you're doing, because it not only improves the quality of your muscle to perform, it also helps and aids your recovery. As someone who trained as a yoga teacher, I know that when I started to implement light stretching in my training, it not only reduced the amount of injuries I got, I actually just felt better and was able to perform at a higher level and better quality as well. It also gives you this all-round body awareness, which allows you to know how your body feels at any one time. And it hasn't got to be much to start with. You can just start with 10, maybe 15 minutes every other day, and maybe switching body parts to just keep it interesting to get going. So making sure that you're not skipping stretching and just doing something to help look after your body so that you can perform and recover better. Next up is not setting specific goals. When we don't set specific enough goals, we can get a little bit lost in the direction that we're heading. We can lose focus, feel a little bit clouded in what we're trying to achieve, and also turn up to training and competitions with no real intention on what we're trying to do. So make sure that whatever goals that you are setting this year, you are definitely making them specific so you know exactly what it is that you're trying to achieve. And another common pitfall that many people fall into when trying to set those goals is that they set outcome goals rather than process goals. This unhealthy habit is one that I see all the time. People that focus on only setting goals based on outcome and achievement. And the problem with that is that those outcomes, results, they're not 100% in your control. And if we don't achieve them, then it creates stress, anxiety, frustration. However, process goals, the way we get to a good performance, are 100% in our control. So focusing on creating some process goals rather than just outcome goals will help you actually achieve what you want a lot easier. And while you're setting these goals and standards for yourself, you want to stay away from this next unhealthy habit, which is perfectionism. I should know because I am riddled with this one. Perfectionism has many different aspects to it, which are great, which has these high standards for ourselves, which is what elite performers have. However, if we only have these high standards, we can fall into doubting ourselves, not taking action because of those doubts. We fear failure more. We procrastinate because we want everything to be perfect before we do something. So while perfectionism will give you some high standards, it will create a lot of drawbacks that will perhaps stop you from taking action towards those goals. The way to get over it and the antidote to it is to build acceptance into what you do. Recognize that creating an imperfect performance is not necessarily a bad performance. Instead of striving for perfection, think about striving for excellence. So you can still have an excellent performance, but it may look ugly and you may just have to accept that. But perfection can also be the result of another habit that we find ourselves, which is rigid thinking. When we're rigid in our thinking, we aren't willing to stray from the path that we currently have. When I was a young athlete growing up, I found a format in which got me to achieving not only a professional contract, but actually all of my skill sets. And when a coach tried to bring in some new ways of doing things, I said no. I was rigid in my thinking. But once I let go of that and I opened up to it, you can actually start to see there's other ways to develop. There's areas that you perhaps missed. Athletes that are open-minded and break away from rigid thinking open up new opportunities in which you can develop what you want. So think about whether the thinking that you have is rigid and you're uncompromising, or can you be a little bit more open-minded and see new ways to develop and possibly new opportunities to grasp onto. And speaking of thinking, many of us fall into this next trap, which is negative self-talk. Now, we all have this voice in our head, which is our biggest critic. And to overcome this, a great task that you can do is give yourself exactly 5 minutes to write down a script that comes from your inner critic. You're going to write down everything that your inner critic would say. This is going to be quite a difficult task, or perhaps maybe easy for many people, but it's going to be harsh on what it says. The next 5 minutes that you're going to set is then writing from a place of your biggest fan, your inner coach. What your person who is building you up, saying everything great about you, would say. From there, you write 2 scripts and you'll be left with these 2 scripts to look at. Your goal then is to look at it and go, okay, I can either speak from this one or this one. And what we want to do is try and make sure that we're aware of what's on our inner critic's page, but move straight over to our inner coach. And you can create that process over time by just recognizing when your inner critic is talking and then what to say that your inner coach would say. Our brains are goal orientated and our unconscious mind listens to our conscious mind. So if you're telling your unconscious mind, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy enough, it'll say, great, I'll be that. So you might find yourself saying, I can't do this, or I'm not good enough. Simply by adding yet changes it from I can't do this yet, I'm not good enough yet. And that moves us from a place of negativity to a place of possibility. Up next is not asking for help. Often can't do it alone and we need support. Therefore, look out for the people that you want to help support you, whether that's a coach, whether that's a teammate, it could be a family member, a friend, but making sure that you are asking for help so that they can not only help guide you, listen to you, but help provide that support that will just bring out the best of you at the times you're going to need it. So go ahead and look out for that person that's going to be able to help you find that guidance, that trust, and maybe even the inspiration to go after your goals and dreams. Number 21 is not reviewing performances. Taking the time to write down 3 simple questions can help fundamentally change the way you perform. Asking yourself, what went well, what went not so well, and what can I add next time? Those 3 questions will help you find the strengths that you need and have so that you can feel motivated towards your next performance. They'll also find the developmental areas that you can start to address, and then you'll have some action that you can take next time, whether that's in the next performance or training, so that you can start to create progress. By doing this, you can go into your next session feeling even more focused and stopping from doing this next unhealthy habit, which is going through the motions at training. I've been there and done it, where we all turn up to training and just simply go through the motions and do another training session. It's really easy to do that, but the very best athletes are intentional with their practice. They turn up and have a focus that is specific to what they want to achieve. That means that they can then focus in on it and get the most out of every session that they're doing. So don't turn up and go through the motions. Because when we're going through the motions, it's really easy to fall into this next unhealthy habit, which is complacency. This is definitely more relevant for when you're finding that you're more comfortable or you're progressing. And it's really easy to take your foot off the gas. You then slow yourself down and actually stop progressing, because when you become complacent, you allow everyone else to continue their progress and you risk them either catching up or even surpassing you. When we fall into complacency, we can even break habits that have got us there in the first place, and then we might even be struggling to bring them back later on. So to stop yourself from being complacent, continuously look to challenge yourself, look for new ways in which you can try things, stay open-minded. But to stay away from this, the truth is you've got to set new targets again and again. You've got to make sure that you're challenging yourself in new ways so that you can seek new ways to develop and improve and continue your progress without being left behind. And this moves us on to our last unhealthy habit, and that is fearing criticism. Being able to take feedback is a superpower. The athletes at the top take on criticism, knowing that what they're listening to, they could potentially use to get themselves better. It takes a little bit of being vulnerable and being able to develop so that you can learn to welcome criticism and see it as an opportunity to grow. Is there any truth in what you're hearing? Is there something that you perhaps can take from it that will make you better? Asking yourself these questions is a vulnerable and courageous step, and it's uncomfortable, but being able to take feedback and this harsh criticism can be one of your greatest superpowers moving forward. So there we have it. While I've given you 24 unhealthy habits to remove, that could be quite overwhelming. So try to make it simple and think about removing 1 every quarter. That would be removing 4 every year. And what a great place to be in, removing 4 unhealthy habits every year. Let me know in the comments which ones you're going to be getting rid of this year. And if you want to level up your mental game even further, be sure to head to this video right now.